So Matthew, Tanteri, nice to have you here. Thank you for joining us, and especially thank you for jumping through all of the hoops to get the technical aspects of this interview rolling. I appreciate it, and
Sure, Chris. I am happy to be here, and we all have to be able to jump through hoops
that's
today.
true.
So
Yep.
easy.
You and I both, when we're in the yoga room, we practice flexibility, right?
Yes.
Yes, exactly. So thank you for that. Um, So you and I met a couple years ago at this point, and we were talking about what you do as a profession, and I was when you went into some detail, I was pretty surprised that your profession even exists this day and age. It was really exciting. So tell us a little bit about what you do.
Okay. I'm an architectural lighting designer. It's a profession that started in, I'd say, in the 50s, 60s.
Okay, and right,
So it's been
and
around.
may I interrupt you for a sec? That was when you first mentioned architectural lighting. I thought I knew what that was. I thought that was, at nighttime you design lighting for buildings, for the exterior of buildings to make them look nice on the skyline. And you corrected me. That's not at all what you do. So explain.
Okay. So the profession is called architectural lighting design. But you probably will better envision it if you think of a lighting architect. So what I do is I'm the person responsible for bringing light into the building, daylight and electric light. But let's just start with electric light. So I work with the architect to design all the lighting, like the luminous surfaces of the building. Just imagine you build a building, no one will see it unless there's light in it, right? So light is what makes the building come to life. It's the surfaces that you see. You have to light the right surfaces. You have to understand the function, right? So I'm the person that will design the lighting on the architectural drawings and then specify the fixtures. I don't install the fixtures. I design I specify the fixtures and the controls. Okay, so that's architectural lighting design. Now, what I do, I'm a specialist in it, in that I'm a daylighting consultant lighting designer. So I specialize in daylighting design. So I work with the architect in the beginning of the concept, in the beginning of the design, the schematic design phase, concept phase. And what I do is I help site, orient, mass, and fenestrate the building to maximize the daylighted floor area. So that means that it can be most dependent on daylight without any electrical lighting in the daytime.
Okay.
So I will look at where the sun is, look at the site, look at the predominant sky conditions, and then work with the architect to develop a daylighting strategy that works for that particular building, and then work with the massing of the building, how it's shaped to capture the most amount of daylight available. And daylight is really light from the sky, not so much from the sun, unless
Sure.
there's a sunlight diffusion strategy that's used. So yeah, this field has been around for about, I'd say, well, forever, right? It's just been part of architecture formally, I'd say, for the last 30 years.
Okay. Okay. I like what you mentioned, daylighting strategy. I who knew? You say that your profession has been around for about 30 years. Who knew that much thought went into into designing and constructing a building?
Sure.
And so, what are some of the advantages? Now, it sounds to me like there are certain aspects that are advantageous, just aesthetically, essentially, for how the building appears, either at nighttime or during the daytime. But what I'm most interested in is how you create a lighting scheme for people inside the building to optimize their performance or just their general health, essentially.
Okay. Yes. So you're mediating between three things usually. So the first thing is you want to first design the building for daylighting and then supplement with electric lighting. That's the best way to do it, because if you try to do electric lighting first and supplement with daylight, it doesn't work.
It's very interesting that, like what you said a moment ago, it's harder to, if you start with the electric lighting and then try to factor in the daylighting afterward, it's almost too late. You've got to use the natural resources first and then supplement. So I guess that's what you're saying, like all the design that you do with electric artificial light is ideally just supplementing what you've already established with natural light. Yeah.
For productivity is really about supplying the right amount of light so that you don't get headaches from not having enough light. Say you're doing a task and there's not enough light, right? There's a couple of things. There's a few factors associated with successful task accomplishment. One of them is light level, right? There's others that are associated with it, such as timing, the size of the object you're looking at, the contrast ratio of the foreground and background, but light level is a big one. There's been studies in productivity, like how to make a worker more productive, and that's where daylighting comes in. Adding daylight to an environment increases productivity, and the percentages go very high. And that's also the introduction of view into where an office worker is sitting. Like daylight's not just the light coming in, it's having access to view and connecting with exterior things so that you're just not there separated. There's a connection with the outside world, and the view can be rated as to its value by the amount of natural elements it has.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, now we all know what it's like to feel disconnected from the outside world.
Yeah. So there's been like Carnegie Mellon has studied it, and there's been really rock solid studies done showing the increase in productivity with the introduction of daylight.
I'm most interested in, in terms of how this pertains to the anatomy course that I'm teaching, like how all of this affects the brain, how all of this affects the body and sleep as well. In my course, we talk about how the pineal gland produces melatonin, which modulates sleep patterns. I talk a little bit about circadian rhythms.
The pineal gland, right? Someone who practices yoga and you've that little third of an inch pine cone shaped organ deep in the middle of the brain. Rene Descartes called it the seat of the soul, right? He thought that it was where thoughts originated. But really, this thing is gone. If you go back into all like Vedic representations and even the Egyptians, there was images of pine cones, and associated with thought. So, and really linked to the third eye. So
right.
I'm not going to get into the mystical part, but have to bring it up.
Thank you, and we've discussed that in the course. So thank you. You're bringing it right back in.
The whole mecanism is pretty amazing of how it works, right? So I'm going to explain the mechanism of how it works, of how light entrains your body. Okay, that's a simple statement. So it starts with this, right? There's about 20 years ago, a new photoreceptor was discovered in the eye. It's called the intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cell, IPGRC.
Okay.
That's what they're known as, right? That photocell is sensitive to around 480 nanometers. Oh my God, it's the color of the sky. The blue sky is what it's sensitive to. And it makes sense because we evolved with the sky. So what this does is that photoreceptor sends a signal that goes to the SCN, the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Now that is your body's pacemaker. It's the master oscillator of your body. It's pacing, it's what gives your body rhythmicity for many things. But what it does for the circadian rhythm is it sends a signal through this long, complex neural pathway, which the pineal gland and the CSN actually sit next to each other in the brain. They're very close. And you would think they would just talk to each other, but they don't.
Okay.
The signal goes down your spine and then back up to the pineal gland. So the signal goes from the suprachiasmatic nucleus to the pineal gland, and it stops the production of melatonin, which is what wakes us up. So in the morning, when light, this happens to me all the time. As soon as light touches my eyelids, I wake up. You need this amount of light between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. What that does is it entrains your system. It's not for that day, it's for the next day, right? That entrainment. So it's not happening immediately, it's happening like the next day.
Got it.
Right? Because you're setting your clock. If you were just put in a cave with no light, your melatonin wouldn't come on at the end of the day the way it's supposed to.
Right.
It would because your clock is off, right? So you need to set the clock in the morning by that amount of light that's stopping the production in the morning, and then it knows, okay, now when it's sunset, the melatonin's going to be produced again because it's waiting, it's counting the time, right? So if you didn't set it in the morning, it doesn't come at the end of the day. Now, if you make it worse, like say you start to look at your screen devices that have blue wavelength light, there's studies done that most of us don't sleep enough.
Right.
Like we don't. Well, not only do we not sleep enough, but we don't go to sleep early enough.
Most of us go to bed too late. I mean, that can segue us into the discussion about Thomas Edison and with the invention of artificial electric light in 1879, and so suddenly he redefined the idea of midnight. Midnight was supposed to be the middle of the night or the middle of your sleeping duration, and now we all stay up till midnight. Some later, and so how do you think that historically in the early, late 1800s, early 1900s, how do you think that shifted everything for us? And was that just was that such a detrimental move, physiologically?
Oh, sleep is the secret weapon for longevity, right? As someone who's gone out teaching and lecturing, of course I've done many times I haven't slept enough before a presentation because I'm at last minute and I'm doing it the night before.
Yeah.
It's the worst thing to do. You're better off going to sleep, sleeping, and winging it, right?
Yeah.
That's always the best thing.
Okay.
All right. So if you don't have enough sleep and have a sleep deficit and your body is you have an irregular circadian rhythm, it affects a lot of things. It affects your hunger, your sexual drive, your energy level, your alertness, right? So it's really going across all your bodily systems. So that's where it lowers your immunity. Mm-hmm. That's why there's lots of studies that show night shift workers, especially like say night shift nurses, have high rates of breast cancer because your immunity is lowered, cancer rates go up, right? So that's why it's so important for people in the medical field to keep their circadian rhythm and train not to go out of rhythm. In the daytime, your body, your neurons in your brain, there's byproduct proteins from having thought all day. They're called beta amyloids, and what they actually fill your brain in the day, and it's like a plaque inside the your neural pathways.
Yep.
When you sleep, regular sleep, it cleans the plaque, right? Now, if you start to get this plaque, it also disturbs your sleep pattern so that you can't sleep. So if you don't sleep enough, the plaque forms. Once you have it, you can't get on a sleep pattern. So it's a vicious cycle. This is a real thing for me because when I get enough sleep, I feel that refresh in my brain. I wake up and I actually feel the flush. And I can use that as an indicator if I've gotten enough sleep. When I have that, I know I've had a good rest when I do. So reading about it, understanding it, and then experiencing it, it's a real thing for me. So, and it's amazing how it affects your level of cognition through the whole day. Like I have deeper thought. When I sleep, I'm able to have greater focus, deeper thoughts. You know, if I multitask, I'm more efficient. I can focus. Okay, so I'm just saying about that because that's a chemical that's it's actually a drug you can feel in your head when you wake up.
Yeah.
Based on having deep sleep. You know, you have to have deep sleep, not light sleep.
Right.
Like you can't drink coffee before you go to bed. You can't. It's having REM, right? It's like deep sleep is the part. So that's when you have that brain flush.
Yeah.
Okay.
And will you tell me a little bit more about that? What that feels like for you? You say you feel the flush. What is that for you?
Okay, so I wake up and I have in my brain, I feel that there's a chemical in there that's almost. It's almost like a shot of liquor that's in your head.
Nice.
That lasts for about 5 minutes.
Okay.
As you wake up, it dissipates and there's clarity. Rather than waking up, there's nothing there and it's like that the whole day.
Right. Just the grog, the cloud. Yeah.
Yeah, the cloud. Like this is like a happy cloud. It's like a pleasant feeling cloud, which then turns into clarity. You know, and man, you hook that up with caffeine and you're riding it, right? You can ride that.
I'm assuming you are familiar with Matthew Walker's best-selling book, Why We Sleep. I read it last summer, and I mean, it changed my life entirely. For my entire adult life, I was convinced that I needed no more than 4 to 6 hours of sleep. You know, I had this like whole macho attitude about, I don't need sleep. And you know what? I can actually be so much more productive with, you know, if I'm not spending my time sleeping, if I'm sitting at my laptop actually churning out work. But it changed everything for me, basically through scare tactic. I mean, he goes through all the things, Alzheimer's and dementia and all the things. I love, first of all, you mentioned the IPGRC, that photocell that was discovered in the brain about 20 years ago. That's another big theme of my anatomy course, is like that we're constantly learning new things about it. We're constantly on the precipice of discovery, which is so cool. So thank you for tying that in. We can talk for hours about the importance of sleep. I'm curious mostly in how you do design, like internal office lighting as an example.
In the morning, color temperatures are measured in Kelvin. So 2700 is about the orange brown color of a candle. And 10,000 is that cool white light of noon.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So when the sun comes up, you know, it's sunrise, the sun's coming up above the horizon. It's very brown, reddish, orange. It's these low color temperatures. And as it gets to midday, you get coolish white light. And then as the sun goes down, you go back to the lower color temperatures like 3,000, 2,700 Kelvin. So you can duplicate that inside with artificial lighting. You can get fluorescent lighting that's 5,000 Kelvin and 3,000 Kelvin, and then you can just dim in between them. You could put the two in the same fixture, and that certainly has been done where, not with any thought about circadian lighting because the science really wasn't there, but just as like a theatrical device. All right. So now when LEDs came, there was RGB. Everyone was doing all different colors, right? Once you got RGB, like it's like the Pilates HIIT class, like just keep flashing different colors, yeah, which is bad
right,
for you.
Right. Oh, right. Yeah, I remember you mentioned that to me also when we started to outfit the studios for these hot Pilates classes. Yeah. Like, no, it's too much.
Well, that's another subject.
All right, sure.
All right. In the morning, I'm trying to entrain a person's circadian rhythms with providing sufficient amount of, let's call it melatonin-rich light. And I will decrease that at 1 o'clock because that's when the period's over. And then we won't bring that melatonin-rich light in again. We could go towards a warmer light. Now, some people, you get sleepy, right? Some people get sleepy at around 3. I do. Now, there's studies done that red light provides an alert signal, but does not entrain. So there's in some hospitals in the nurses station, red light will be used after midday, like around 3,
Okay.
to create alertness, but without entrainment.
So when you
And
say
then,
without entrainment, it's not going to impact the next 24 hours, but it's going to just give
right.
you a little boost in that moment.
Well, not in that moment for like the late afternoon. So in an office, you could have the color temperature higher in the morning, so it feels cool, white, and bluish in the morning. Then at noon, you sort of peak it and start to drop it warmer. And now you're sort of tracking as the sun, you're like recreating the sun going down, right? Inside the office. And then if it's winter time and it gets dark at 4 o'clock outside, well, you could still carry that hour after till 5 inside. You could still make it you can make it an equinox day, even though it's winter inside,
Okay.
just to keep people from falling asleep at the end of the day,
Cool.
right?
Cool.
So you could prolong the day because you're trying to stabilize the day. If you're a worker and you're working and it's morning, you could kind of feel like, oh, it's morning, it's a cool, brighter light. Then it's noon, you get a cue, it's noon from the color temperature and the level. Then as afternoon comes and it starts to warm up, the end of the day is coming. And like 4 or 5 o'clock, yeah, it's time for me to go home. I'm wrapping it up. Now you could raise the light a little bit at the end of the day, not to entrain, but just to give a signal that, okay, yeah, it's the end of the day. This is the last boost.
Okay, cool.
This is the last, and then it's over.
I like that. And it almost seems like you're like sort of like secretly manipulating, but it's in a very good way.
Yeah.
Now, I have a couple questions for you. Now that you mentioned the cool white light of noon, which I think you said was what, 12,000 Kelvin or something like that?
Let's say it's about 10,000.
10,000. Okay. I don't recall exactly in Matthew Walker's book, but he said there's a certain number of hours. Basically, if you're like trying to get to sleep and you get a ping from your phone and you pick it up, you look at it, and he said, like you look at your phone for just 20 seconds and you lose, I don't know, X number of hours of sleep. It was like 3 hours or something. Now, is that 10,000 Kelvin light of noon, is it the same type of light that's coming from your phone, which at noon is great for you, but if you're looking at it at 2 a.m. when you're trying to get to bed, it's going to kill your ability to fall asleep? Is it the same thing?
Yeah. I'm not going first, I'm wary of anyone who is equating time and wavelength at this point because the science isn't there yet of those relationships. If there was, I would have better dosage requirements that I would be using. That right now it's a very coarse set of requirements that we're doing because it hasn't been packaged well yet. Like this science is developing. Once it really comes into lighting, the FDA is going to regulate it because it's going to be a medical device.
Yeah.
Right? We're not there yet.
Okay.
Even the lighting fixture manufacturers, they don't promote this aspect of health. Once they do, it will be a medical device.
Is it because they can't make those claims because they don't have the studies to support it? Is that the only reason? Yeah, great. Thank you. That's a great segue too, because I talk about how I hear things in the yoga room that teachers say that have no clinical support at all. So I'm just reminding everybody that there's another example of that.
Right. So I think, looking at your screen, there's a lot to it. If your screen is as bright as the sky and you're holding up to your face where it fills your visual field, right? So it's as if you were looking at the sky. And then, that thing of you have to be outside for about 10 minutes to start to entrain your system.
Okay.
I think it really you have to be there for a period of time. I mean, I would think it's more than 10 minutes.
Okay.
The amount of time, the wavelength, the amount of chemical that's being released through the ganglion cell, through the optic nerve, it's not all equated yet.
it's clear to me that you put a lot of effort into, creating this strategy across the day in the office. So, light is a particular wavelength and luminosity, I guess, at 8 a.m. And then over the course of the day, you transition it. What about, we had this really great experience while we're at work. What happens then when we get home and we still stay up till 2 a.m. with our home lights on? Is that what happens to the system then when you're like sort of so delicately coddled and taken care of while you're at work? What happens when we get home and there we haven't paid for someone to strategically
Yeah.
configure our
Well,
lighting to facilitate good sleeping patterns? And what happens like when half of your day is that way and then the other half isn't?
now that we know there's a photo cell, we have a responsibility because you have a responsibility to your individual health to like because it's just like drinking alcohol or doing other risky things at night. You should be having lower light levels in the house. You should be turning off blue colored light. Like if you have blue wavelengths, if you have like kitchen lights that are fluorescent still and they're bright, well, those shouldn't go on at night. You should be using dimmed light. You're turning it down, right? If you're say you like to watch TV, like turn off the TV at some time before you get ready to sleep. Like give yourself some time to turn it to calm down. You're not going to just turn off the TV and go to sleep, right? So you want to have more amber colored light. You want to reduce the intensity of light, and you want to reduce screen time at night.
Oh, this was a question.
Those are my tips.
Thank you. A friend of mine just asked me this actually a couple of weeks ago. Is watching a television screen just as harmful as what we know now with the phones and the laptops? Is it the same? Is your brain receiving it the same way? That type of light?
It's a screen. They're all
Okay.
display screens, and there's short wavelengths in there. And if it's a big screen and you're close to it and it's filling your visual field, you're being exposed. So really, you should just lower the light level. Use more amber light. Be careful about blue light. If like used to have blue neon a lot, and in decorative light, I used to have like blue lighting in my studio, in my home that I took out at night because I know how what it does,
Yeah.
right? So you got to
Yeah.
be careful with that. It's
And
like
now-
looking at the sky at night
Right.
in a
Sure.
high
Sure.
dosage,
Yeah.
right?
And so I put a lot of attention into lighting in my home, but I don't have the fancy color changing bulbs. Something you said a moment ago? Is it good enough just to like dim the light? Is that helpful toward the evening? To have just a lower light level, whether you're changing color or spectrum or not.
Yeah, lower light
Okay.
levels.
All right. Great.
Yeah, lower light levels in in general lighting, create an ambience with lower light levels. If someone needs to read something, they can have a local task light and not disturb everyone else.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So they don't have to turn on the whole room for
Right.
that one person.
Right.
Have a local task light. If there's kids doing homework, they should be doing their homework some hours before they're set to go to bed. You don't have devices in their rooms, right? They're not watching TV. You don't put the TV in your bedroom. That's a great thing, right? Right? Don't go to sleep with your laptop on your knees, right? The thing about the that indirect route of the signal going from the eye to the CSN, then down the spine and up. I think of that. That's why yoga is so good with all the flexibility in the spine. Your spine's important to support, but it's also your brain is going down your spine. So, and then the pineal gland, it can get calcified, right? We know you know that, right?
Yeah.
Because from you, like like phosphorus and calcium. As you get older, it gets calcified. So I would think you don't want a calcified pineal gland,
No,
right?
no. Just like-
So I don't know the science on that,
Right.
but
But we just like with arterial sclerosis, like those if they're less malleable, just like the intervertebral discs, if they're less malleable, they're going to fail. So with the yoga, we keep things moving and we keep things active. I mentioned this in an interview with Jeff Chen. Like if you don't use it, you lose it. And and so that's why we have to keep moving and keep stimulated and all the things. Well, hey, Matthew, thank you a ton. In return, once we're able to see each other in person again, I'm gonna have to treat you to one of those liquor shots to the brain that you mentioned in the morning. Right? A
Okay.
less metaphoric one. So thank you for your time. That was a lot of fun.
Sure.
Yeah.